The notification on my phone hit me like a punch to the gut. Front door camera offline. I was sitting in a cramped hotel room in Detroit, 300 miles from home, staring at the blank feed where I should have been seeing my front porch. The timestamp showed it had gone dark at 11:47 p.m. the night before. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Oliver Kane, and I've spent the last 18 years analyzing supply chains for a mid-sized manufacturing company. I'm good at spotting patterns, finding the weak links, identifying where things go wrong. Right now, every instinct I'd honed in boardrooms and warehouses was screaming that something was very, very wrong at home. I called Brenda immediately. My wife of 15 years answered on the fourth ring, her voice thick with what sounded like sleep. "Oliver? What time is it?" "The front camera's down. What happened?" A pause. Too long. In my line of work, you learn that hesitation usually means someone's crafting a lie. "Oh, that. Yeah, some delivery guy knocked it loose yesterday. I've been meaning to fix it, but you know how I am with technology." I knew exactly how she was with technology. Brenda could navigate social media like a digital native and had programmed our smart home system better than I could. The woman who sold high-end home decor for a living, who coordinated with contractors and designers daily, was definitely not helpless with a simple security camera. "Which delivery company?" Another pause. I'm not sure. Maybe Amazon? There were so many packages yesterday." I pulled up our Amazon account on my laptop. No deliveries scheduled for yesterday. No deliveries for the past week, actually. "Okay, well, I'll fix it when I get home tomorrow." "Sure, honey. Love you." The line went silent before I could respond. I sat there in that sterile hotel room, listening to the hum of the air conditioner and the distant rumble of Detroit traffic. 18 years of marriage, and I'd never doubted Brenda. She was the popular one at her office, the neighborhood favorite who organized block parties and remembered everyone's birthdays. She had that easy charm that made people gravitate toward her, while I was the quiet analyst who preferred spreadsheets to small talk. But patterns don't lie, and this pattern was all wrong. I opened my laptop and accessed our home security system. We'd installed it 2 years ago after a string of break-ins in the neighborhood. What Brenda didn't know, what I'd never mentioned because it seemed unnecessary, was that the bedroom had a camera too. A small, discreet unit I'd installed in the corner near the ceiling fan, angled to capture the window and sliding door that led to our backyard deck. Insurance purposes, I'd told myself. Security. Now I was grateful for my paranoia. I clicked on the bedroom camera feed and scrolled back to the previous night. 11:30 p.m. The room was dark, but the infrared showed our bed clearly. Empty. 11:45 p.m., still empty. 11:50 p.m. The bedroom door opened. Brenda entered, followed by a man I didn't recognize. Tall, broad shoulders, wearing what looked like an expensive jacket. They were talking quietly, too quietly for the camera to pick up audio, but their body language spoke volumes. Intimate. Familiar. This wasn't their first time. I watched my wife of 15 years guide a stranger to our bed. I watched her pull back the covers, the same covers I'd straightened before leaving for Detroit. I watched her laugh at something he said, that bright, genuine laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in months. The rational part of my brain, the analyst, started cataloging details. The man was younger than me, maybe mid-30s, well-dressed, confident in the way he moved through my house, like he'd been there before, multiple times. I fast-forwarded through the footage, stopping at key moments. They talked for nearly an hour after. He didn't leave until almost 2 a.m., long after the front camera had mysteriously gone offline. I scrolled back further. 3 days ago, while I was in meetings with suppliers in Chicago. Same man, same routine. A week before that, during my overnight trip to Milwaukee. The pattern was clear, methodical. Brenda had been planning around my travel schedule. My phone buzzed with a text from her. "Miss you. Can't wait for you to come home tomorrow." I stared at that heart emoji for a long time. Then I started making copies of everything. The next morning, I drove home through familiar suburbs that suddenly felt foreign. Every house, every tree, every street sign looked the same, but I felt like I was returning to a place I'd never been. The man who'd left for Detroit 3 days ago had been a trusting husband. The man coming home was something else entirely. Brenda met me at the door with a smile and a kiss that tasted like betrayal. She was wearing the blue sundress I'd bought her for our anniversary, the one she said made her feel beautiful. "How was the trip?" she asked, taking my overnight bag. "Productive," I said, studying her face for any sign of guilt. There was none. She was either an incredible actress or a sociopath. Maybe both. "I missed you," she said, wrapping her arms around me. "Did you?" The words came out colder than I intended. She pulled back slightly, searching my expression. "Of course I did. Why would you ask that?" "No reason. Just tired." I walked through our house like a crime scene investigator. The living room looked normal, but I noticed the couch cushions were arranged differently. The kitchen was spotless, too spotless. Brenda was neat, but this level of cleaning suggested she'd been scrubbing away evidence. In our bedroom, I examined the scene of the crime. Fresh sheets. The comforter was folded differently than I remembered. Even the air smelled wrong, like expensive cologne mixed with guilt. "I changed the bedding yesterday," Brenda said from the doorway. "Thought you'd appreciate coming home to something fresh." "That's thoughtful." I spent the rest of the day playing the role of oblivious husband while my mind raced through possibilities. Confrontation was the obvious choice, but my analytical training suggested a different approach. I needed more information. I needed to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with. That evening, as Brenda chatted about her day at work, I found myself studying her like a specimen under a microscope. She was animated, talking about a difficult client and a successful sale, but there was something performative about it, like she was working extra hard to seem normal. "Oh, and Mark from the regional office stopped by yesterday," she said casually, cutting into her chicken. "He was in town for meetings and wanted to discuss that new product line." Mark. Now I had a name. "Mark Edison?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Yes, you remember him. We met him at the company Christmas party last year." I did remember him. Tall, broad shoulders, expensive suits. The kind of guy who dominated conversations and laughed too loud at his own jokes. The kind of guy who would absolutely sleep with a married woman and feel good about it. "Right. How long was he here?" "Oh, not long. Maybe an hour. We mostly talked shop." I nodded and took another bite, tasting nothing. An hour. The footage showed he'd been there for over 4 hours. After dinner, I excused myself to my home office and began my real work. I created encrypted backups of all the security footage, storing copies in multiple cloud accounts Brenda didn't know about. I started a detailed log of dates, times, and observations. I researched divorce attorneys in our area, reading reviews and checking credentials. Most importantly, I began documenting our financial situation. Joint accounts, individual accounts, assets, debts, investments. If this was going where I thought it was going, I needed to protect myself. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Great meeting you today. Looking forward to next time. M." I stared at the screen. He'd sent it to me by mistake, clearly intending it for Brenda. Even his affair was sloppy. I screenshot the message and added it to my growing file of evidence. Then I deleted it and went back to work. From the living room, I could hear Brenda watching her favorite show, laughing at all the right moments. The sound made my skin crawl. How long had she been living this double life? How many business trips had she used as opportunities? How many lies had she told with that same bright smile? I thought about our daughter Jenna, away at college, and wondered if she knew. I thought about our friends, our neighbors, our shared life that was apparently built on quicksand. But mostly, I thought about Mark Edison and the way he'd moved through my house like he owned it. The analyst in me was already 3 steps ahead, mapping out scenarios, calculating probabilities, identifying the most efficient path forward. I'd spent my career finding weaknesses in complex systems. Now I was going to find the weaknesses in theirs. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a ghost in my own life. I went through the motions of being Oliver Kane, loving husband and reliable employee, while internally I transformed into something harder and more calculating. My travel schedule became my greatest asset. 3 days in Minneapolis gave me time to research private investigators. An overnight trip to St. Louis let me consult with a divorce attorney via encrypted video call. A weekend conference in Indianapolis provided cover for opening new bank accounts and rerouting my direct deposit. The security footage told a story that would have broken a different man. Mark Edison was a regular visitor, arriving within hours of my departures and leaving just before my returns. They had a routine, these two. He brought wine, expensive bottles I could identify from the labels. She cooked for him, elaborate meals using ingredients that never appeared when I was home. They moved through my house with casual intimacy. He knew where we kept the good glasses. She had bought new lingerie that I'd never seen. They watched movies on our couch, using the throw pillows my mother had given us for Christmas. The most damning footage came from a Tuesday night in October. I was supposed to be in Chicago for 3 days, but my meetings had been canceled. Instead of coming home early and surprising my wife, some instinct made me book a hotel room and watch the cameras remotely. Mark arrived at 8 p.m. with flowers and a bottle of champagne. They didn't even make it to the bedroom initially. I watched them christen our kitchen counter, our living room rug, and finally, our marital bed. The whole performance lasted until nearly 3 a.m. I sat in that anonymous hotel room, documenting timestamps and taking screenshots, feeling something cold and hard crystallize in my chest. This wasn't just an affair. This was a complete replacement of our life together. When I finally came home the next day, Brenda greeted me with the same enthusiastic kiss and the same bright questions about my trip. She was wearing the perfume he'd bought her, I could tell, because it wasn't a scent I recognized, and I'd been buying her perfume for 15 years. "How was Chicago?" she asked, hanging up my coat. "Boring meetings and bad hotel coffee," I replied, watching her face for any flicker of guilt. Nothing. She was either a world-class actress or a complete sociopath. That weekend, we had dinner with our neighbors, the Hendersons. Tom Henderson worked in construction, and his wife Sarah taught elementary school. They were good people, the kind of couple who still held hands after 23 years of marriage. "You two seem happy," Sarah commented as we sat on their back patio, watching the sunset. "We are," Brenda said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "Oliver takes such good care of me." The irony was breathtaking. I was taking care of her, all right. I was carefully documenting every lie, every betrayal, every moment of her elaborate deception. I was building a case that would destroy her life as thoroughly as she'd destroyed mine. "Marriage takes work," Tom said, raising his beer bottle in a mock toast. "But it's worth it when you find the right person." I clinked bottles with him and smiled. "Absolutely. Trust is everything." Brenda's hand tightened on mine, and for a split second, I thought I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt? Fear? But then she was smiling again, playing the role of devoted wife. Later that night, as we got ready for bed, she was more affectionate than she'd been in months. She kissed my neck while I brushed my teeth, ran her fingers through my hair while I set the alarm clock. "I love you," she whispered as we settled into bed. "I love you too," I replied automatically, and realized with clinical detachment that I felt absolutely nothing. The next morning brought a breakthrough. Brenda's phone rang while she was in the shower, and she'd left it on the kitchen counter. The caller ID showed Mark, Regional. I answered it. Hello? A pause. Then, sorry, I think I have the wrong number. Is this Mark Edison? Another pause, longer this time. Yes, who is this? This is Oliver Kane, Brenda's husband. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Finally, oh, hi, Oliver, I was just calling about some work stuff. At 7 in the morning on a Saturday? It's urgent, regional stuff. I could hear the shower still running upstairs. Would you like me to take a message? No, that's okay, I'll call back later. The line went silent. I stared at the phone, processing this new information. Mark Edison was panicking. Good. Panicked people make mistakes, and I needed him to make mistakes. When Brenda came downstairs, I was reading the newspaper and drinking coffee like nothing had happened. Who was that on the phone? She asked, toweling her hair. Wrong number. She nodded and started making breakfast, but I noticed her hands were shaking slightly as she cracked eggs into the pan. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Did you answer Brenda's phone? I screenshot it and added it to my evidence file. Then I replied, Who is this? Sorry, wrong number again. I showed the exchange to my reflection in the bathroom mirror and allowed myself a small smile. Mark Edison was definitely panicking. That afternoon, I took a drive through Mark's neighborhood. He lived in one of those new developments with McMansions and perfect lawns, the kind of place where everyone drove German cars and hired services to handle their landscaping. His house was a colonial revival with a 3-car garage and a swimming pool. I parked across the street and called him. Hello? Mark, this is Oliver Kane. We should talk. I don't think that's a good idea. I think it's a great idea. In fact, I think we have a lot to discuss. Look, I don't know what you think you know, but I know you've been sleeping with my wife for at least 3 months. I know you prefer the Kendall Jackson Chardonnay and that you bring roses from the florist on Maple Street. I know you have a scar on your left shoulder and that you wear boxer briefs with little golf clubs on them. The silence was deafening. I know you were in my house Tuesday night until 2:47 a.m., and I know exactly what you did on my kitchen counter. Jesus Christ. I'm not interested in drama, Mark. I'm interested in solutions. We should meet. I can't. This is crazy. I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen, and now we need to figure out what happens next. I could hear him breathing heavily. What do you want? I want to meet. Tomorrow noon at the Starbucks on 5th Street. Come alone. And if I don't, then I send everything I have to your wife, your boss, and Brenda's entire office. Your choice. I hung up and drove home, feeling more alive than I had in months. The game was finally beginning. The Starbucks on 5th Street was busy enough to provide cover, but quiet enough for a private conversation. I arrived 15 minutes early and chose a corner table with clear sightlines to both entrances. Old habits from my military days. Always know your exits, always control the terrain. Mark Edison walked in at exactly noon, looking like a man headed to his own execution. He was shorter than he appeared in the security footage, and his expensive suit couldn't hide the nervous energy radiating from every pore. He spotted me immediately and approached with the careful steps of someone walking through a minefield. Oliver. Mark. Coffee? I'm fine. Sit down. He sat, glancing around like he expected FBI agents to emerge from behind the pastry display. What do you want? I studied him for a moment. Up close, he was less impressive than I'd expected. Weak chin, soft hands, the kind of guy who probably peaked in college and had been chasing that high ever since. I want to understand the timeline, I said calmly. When did this start? I can't. Mark. My voice carried the authority I'd learned managing difficult suppliers. I have footage of you in my bedroom. I have text messages. I have credit card receipts for flowers and wine. I have photographs of your car in my driveway. We're past the denial phase. His shoulders sagged. August. It started in August. Where? The regional conference in Milwaukee. We were both there, and we ended up at the hotel bar. She said you were having problems. What kind of problems? She said you were distant, working too much. that you didn't appreciate her. I nodded like this made perfect sense. And you decided to help with that. It wasn't supposed to happen. We were just talking and then you decided to sleep with a married woman. She said she was thinking about leaving you anyway. That hit harder than I expected. I kept my expression neutral, but something must have shown because Mark immediately looked apologetic. Look, I'm sorry. This whole thing got out of hand. How often? What? How often have you been in my house? He squirmed in his chair. I don't know, maybe a dozen times? Try again. Maybe more. I don't keep track. I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot from my security system. His face went white. 23 times, I said. 23 times you've been in my house, in my bed, eating food I paid for and drinking wine you brought to impress my wife. Jesus. Are you in love with her? The question seemed to surprise him. What? Simple question. Are you in love with my wife? I don't know. Maybe. This is all really complicated. It's not complicated at all. You're sleeping with a married woman and you got caught. The only question now is what we do about it. What do you mean? I leaned forward. I mean I could destroy both of you. Brenda's boss is very traditional. Family values, church on Sunday, the whole package. How do you think he'd react to knowing his star salesperson is cheating on her husband? And your company has a morality clause in their employment contracts. I checked. Mark's face had gone from white to green. You can't be serious. I'm very serious. I could also send copies of everything to your wife. What's her name again? Jennifer? How do you know about Jennifer? I know lots of things, Mark. I know you have 2 kids in private school. I know you have a mortgage payment of $4,000 a month. I know you drive a leased BMW and that you're 3 months behind on your country club dues. You've been investigating me? I've been protecting myself. There's a difference. He sat back in his chair, looking defeated. What do you want? I want you to end it. Today. Right now. I want you to call Brenda and tell her it's over. And if I do that, then this stays between us. No wife, no boss, no public humiliation. You disappear from our lives and we pretend this never happened. And if I don't? I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Then I burn down your entire life. He stared at me for a long moment. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Brenda said you were weak, that you never stood up for yourself. Brenda says a lot of things. Most of them are lies. Mark pulled out his phone with shaking hands. I'll call her. Put it on speaker. What? Put it on speaker. I want to hear this conversation. He hesitated, then complied. The phone rang twice before Brenda answered. Mark, I wasn't expecting to hear from you today. Her voice was warm, intimate, the voice she used to use with me. Brenda, we need to talk. Okay, what's wrong? You sound weird. Mark glanced at me, then back at the phone. This thing between us, it has to end. A pause. What are you talking about? I can't do this anymore. It's wrong, and I can't keep lying to Jennifer. Mark, where is this coming from? Yesterday you were talking about us getting away for a weekend. Yesterday was a mistake. This whole thing is a mistake. Are you breaking up with me? Her voice had turned cold. I'm ending this before someone gets hurt. Someone's already hurt, you bastard. What about everything you said? What about loving me? Mark looked at me desperately. I gestured for him to continue. I'm sorry, Brenda. It's over. Fine. Go back to your boring wife and your boring life, but don't expect me to be there when you change your mind. The line went silent. Mark set his phone down with trembling hands. There, it's done. Good. Now we need to discuss the rules. Rules? You don't contact her. You don't respond if she contacts you. If you see her at work functions, you're polite but distant. You never set foot in my house again, and you never mention this conversation to anyone. Okay. If you break any of these rules, I release everything: photos, videos, text messages, credit card receipts, hotel records, everything. Do you understand? Yes. Say it. I understand. I stood up and extended my hand. Then we have an agreement. He shook it reluctantly. His palm was sweaty. Oh, and Mark? If you ever speak to my wife again, I won't be this reasonable. I left him sitting there and drove home, feeling like I'd just won the first battle in a war I was determined to win. But when I walked through my front door, I realized the war was just beginning. Brenda was waiting for me in the living room, her face streaked with tears and twisted with rage. "You snake," she snarled. "What did you do?" The woman standing in my living room bore little resemblance to the Brenda I'd married. Gone was the carefully maintained facade of the devoted wife. In its place stood someone I'd never seen before, raw, furious, and completely unhinged. "What did I do?" I repeated calmly, hanging my keys on the hook by the door. "I had coffee with a colleague of yours." "Don't play games with me, Oliver. Mark just called me and ended everything. What did you say to him?" I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water, taking my time. I told him the truth. "What truth?" "That I know about your affair, that I have evidence, that continuing to sleep with my wife might have consequences for his career and his marriage." She followed me, her heels clicking angrily on the hardwood floor. "You threatened him." "I presented him with information and let him make an informed decision. He chose to end your relationship. I can't say I'm surprised. He struck me as the type who'd run at the first sign of trouble." "You bastard. You have no right." "I have every right." I turned to face her, and something in my expression made her take a step back. "I'm your husband. This is my house. You've been bringing another man into our bed for months, and you want to talk about rights?" "How long have you known?" "Long enough." "The cameras." It wasn't a question. "The cameras." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You've been watching me. You sick freak. You've been watching us." "I've been watching my own house, Brenda. The fact that you chose to use it as a love nest is your problem, not mine. This is harassment. This is stalking. I could have you arrested." "For monitoring my own property?" "I don't think so. But please call the police. I'd love to show them the footage." That stopped her cold. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her mind racing, calculating her options. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "I want you to pack a bag and leave." "This is my house, too." "Actually, it's not. The deed is in my name only. I bought it before we were married, remember? You have no legal claim to this property." "You can't just throw me out." "I'm not throwing you out. I'm asking you to leave voluntarily while we figure out what comes next." "And if I refuse?" "Then I call your boss tomorrow morning and share some interesting video footage. Then I call Mark's wife and have a very enlightening conversation. Then I post everything on social media and let our friends and neighbors draw their own conclusions." Her face went white. "You wouldn't. Try me." We stared at each other across the kitchen island where she'd betrayed our marriage. The afternoon light streaming through the windows seemed harsh, revealing every line of anger and fear on her face. "I need time to think," she said finally. "You have until tomorrow morning." "That's not enough time." "It's more than you gave our marriage." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "Oliver, please, we can work this out. It was a mistake. I was confused, and Mark took advantage." "Don't." My voice was sharp enough to cut. "Don't you dare try to play the victim. You made a choice. You made it over and over again for months. You looked me in the eye every single day and lied to my face. I never meant to hurt you. But you did. And now there are consequences." She started crying then, real tears that might have moved me a few weeks ago. Now they just felt like another manipulation. "Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem anymore." "What about Jenna? What about our daughter? What about her? Are you going to tell her?" Are you going to destroy her family just to get revenge on me? I considered this. Jenna was a sophomore at State, studying psychology and planning to change the world. She called every Sunday and visited during breaks. She loved both of us, and this would devastate her. I'll tell her the truth when she asks. Until then, this stays between us. And if I leave? What happens then? Then we get divorced quietly and try to salvage what's left of our dignity. I don't want a divorce. You should have thought of that before you started sleeping with Mark Edison. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I made a mistake, Oliver. One mistake. Doesn't 15 years of marriage count for something? One mistake? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my evidence folder. August 15th, August 22nd, September 3rd, September 10th, September 17th. Stop. September 24th, October 1st, October 8th. Stop. October 15th, October 22nd, yesterday. I looked up at her. That's not one mistake, Brenda. That's a pattern of deliberate betrayal. She slumped against the counter, looking defeated. What do you want from me? I want you to leave. Tonight. We'll figure out the rest later. And if I don't? Then tomorrow becomes very unpleasant for both of us. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her weighing her options. Finally, she nodded. I'll pack a bag. Good. She started toward the stairs, then turned back. For what it's worth, I did love you. I do love you. No, I said quietly. You love the idea of me. You love the security I provide, the house, the lifestyle, the respectability, but you don't love me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have been able to do this. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. There was nothing left to say. I listened to her moving around upstairs, opening drawers and closets, packing the remnants of our life together into a suitcase. It took her almost 2 hours, and when she came back downstairs, she looked like a stranger. I'll be staying at Sarah's, she said, referring to her sister who lived across town. Fine. We should talk about this more when we've both had time to think. There's nothing more to talk about. She stood in the doorway for a moment, suitcase in hand, looking back at the house we'd shared for 15 years. I'm sorry, Oliver. I really am. I know you are. You're sorry you got caught. She flinched again, then walked out the door. I watched through the window as she loaded her car and drove away. Then I sat down in my empty house and realized that for the first time in months, I could breathe freely. But the relief was short-lived. My phone was already buzzing with text messages, and I had a feeling the real battle was just beginning. The first message was from Mark. She's calling me nonstop. I'm not answering, but she's getting crazy. The second was from Sarah, Brenda's sister. What the hell did you do to my sister? The third was from a number I didn't recognize. This is Jennifer Edison. I think we need to talk. I stared at that last message for a long time. Then I poured myself a drink and started planning my next move. The game was far from over. Jennifer Edison was nothing like I'd expected. Where Brenda was all curves and carefully applied makeup, Mark's wife was athletic and natural, the kind of woman who looked equally comfortable in a boardroom or on a hiking trail. She'd suggested we meet at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory for what promised to be a difficult conversation. You must be Oliver, she said, approaching my table with the confident stride of someone used to taking charge. Mrs. Edison, thank you for meeting me. Call me Jennifer, and thank you for reaching out. She sat down and studied me with intelligent brown eyes. I have to admit, when I got your message, I wasn't sure whether to call the police or thank you. I understand this is awkward. Awkward doesn't begin to cover it. She signaled the barista for coffee. How long have you known? A few weeks. You? I suspected something was wrong for months, but I didn't have proof until yesterday. What happened yesterday? She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. These were in Mark's car. She slid the envelope across the table. Inside were printouts of text messages between Mark and Brenda, going back months. The content was explicit, intimate, and damning. He left his phone connected to the car's Bluetooth, Jennifer explained. The messages popped up on the dashboard screen while I was driving to pick up our daughter from soccer practice. I scanned the messages, recognizing dates that corresponded with my business trips. The casual way they discussed their affair, the planning around my schedule, the complete disregard for the lives they were destroying. It was all there in black and white. "I'm sorry," I said, sliding the envelope back to her. "Are you? Or are you relieved to have company in this particular club?" I considered the question. "Both, I think. Mark came home last night and confessed everything, said you'd confronted him and that he'd ended it with your wife. That's true? He also said you threatened to destroy his career if he didn't stop seeing her. Also true." She smiled grimly. "Good. He deserves to sweat a little. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to divorce him, take him for everything he's worth, and make sure he never sees our kids unsupervised again." Her voice was matter-of-fact, like she was discussing the weather. "What about you?" "Same plan, essentially." "Good. They made their choices, and now they get to live with the consequences." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, two people who'd been betrayed by the same conspiracy, finding solidarity in their shared anger. "Can I ask you something?" Jennifer said finally. "Sure. Do you think they actually love each other, or was this just about the thrill of getting away with something?" I thought about the security footage, the way Mark and Brenda moved together, the easy intimacy they'd developed over months of deception. "I think they love the idea of each other," I said finally. "But love built on lies and betrayal isn't really love at all. It's just selfishness with better marketing." "That's very philosophical for someone whose life just imploded." "My life didn't implode. My marriage did. There's a difference." She studied me with new interest. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone angrier, more broken. Mark painted you as this weak, passive guy who didn't appreciate his wife." "Mark needed to justify what he was doing. Easier to steal another man's wife if you convince yourself he doesn't deserve her." "And did you? Deserve her, I mean?" I considered this. I thought I did. But maybe the question is whether she deserved me. Based on what I've seen, I'd say no. My phone buzzed with a text from Brenda. "We need to talk. This has gone far enough." I showed it to Jennifer, who snorted with laughter. "The audacity of these people never ceases to amaze me. She cheats on you for months, gets caught, and now she wants to negotiate." "What did Mark say when you confronted him?" "That it was a mistake. That he never meant for it to happen. That he still loves me and wants to work things out." "Do you believe him?" "I believe he's sorry he got caught. I believe he's scared about losing half his assets and paying child support. But do I believe he's genuinely remorseful? No." Another text from Brenda. "Oliver, please. We can fix this." "She's persistent," Jennifer observed. "She's desperate." "Are you going to respond?" I typed back, "There's nothing to fix. You broke it beyond repair." The response came immediately. "I'm coming over. We're going to talk about this like adults." I showed Jennifer the message. "Looks like my afternoon just got more interesting. Want some backup?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'd love to meet the woman who helped destroy my marriage. Compare notes, so to speak." I stared at her. "You want to be there when she shows up?" "If you don't mind the company." I promised to behave myself. Something about the way she said it made me think Jennifer Edison's definition of behaving herself might be very different from most people's. "Actually," I said, "that sounds perfect." We drove to my house in separate cars, arriving just as Brenda was pulling into the driveway. She got out of her car looking like she was prepared for battle. Full makeup, expensive dress, the armor of a woman who'd always been able to charm her way out of trouble. Her confidence evaporated the moment she saw Jennifer. "Who is this?" she demanded. "Brenda, meet Jennifer Edison, Mark's wife." Brenda went pale. "What is she doing here?" "We were having coffee and discussing our mutual problem," Jennifer said pleasantly. "You remember Mark, don't you? Tall, weak chin, drives a BMW he can't afford. This is between Oliver and me. Actually, it's between all of us. You involved my husband in your little drama, which makes it my business too." I unlocked the front door and gestured for them both to enter. "Ladies, shall we take this inside?" The next hour was one of the most surreal experiences of my life. Brenda tried every tactic in her arsenal: tears, anger, seduction, guilt, threats, while Jennifer sat calmly on my couch, occasionally interjecting with pointed questions or observations that cut straight to the heart of Brenda's lies. "You said Mark was going to leave me for you," Jennifer said at one point. "But when Oliver confronted him, he folded like a cheap suit. Doesn't sound like true love to me." "You don't understand," Brenda protested. "Mark was scared. Oliver threatened him. Oliver presented him with facts and let him make a choice. Mark chose to protect himself instead of standing by you. What does that tell you about his feelings?" "He loves me. He loves the idea of consequence-free closeness with someone else's wife. The moment there were actual consequences, he ran back to his boring life with his boring wife." Jennifer smiled sweetly. "That would be me, by the way." "This is all your fault," Brenda said, turning on me. "If you hadn't been spying on me, if I hadn't been monitoring my own property, you mean, if I hadn't discovered that my wife was cheating on me in our bedroom. You violated my privacy. You violated our marriage. I made a mistake. You made a choice, over and over again for months. You chose to lie to me, to betray me, to bring another man into our home and our bed. Those weren't mistakes, Brenda. They were decisions." She started crying again, but this time even she seemed to realize how hollow it looked. "What do you want from me?" she asked finally. "I want you to sign divorce papers without contest. I want you to take responsibility for your actions, and I want you to leave me alone." "And if I don't?" Jennifer leaned forward. "Then we release everything: photos, videos, text messages, hotel receipts, your boss, your co-workers, your clients, your family. Everyone gets to see exactly what kind of person you really are." "You can't do that." "Watch us," I said quietly. Brenda looked back and forth between us, and I could see the moment she realized she was beaten. Her shoulders sagged, and for the first time since this whole mess started, she looked genuinely defeated. "I'll sign the papers," she said finally. "Good. But I want half of everything. You'll get what the law entitles you to, minus what you've cost me in emotional distress and the expense of this divorce." "That's not how it works. We'll let the lawyers figure it out." She stood up, smoothing down her dress with shaking hands. "I loved you, Oliver. Whatever you think of me now, I did love you." "Maybe you did. But love without respect, without honesty, without fidelity, that's not really love at all. That's just selfishness wearing a prettier mask." She looked like I'd slapped her. Then she walked out of my house for the second time in 2 days. Jennifer and I sat in silence for a moment after the door closed. "Well," she said finally, "that was therapeutic. More than I expected. What happens now? Now we rebuild, both of us." She stood up and extended her hand. "It's been a pleasure meeting you, Oliver Kane. I'm sorry it was under these circumstances, but I'm glad we're on the same side." "Likewise." After she left, I sat alone in my quiet house and realized something had fundamentally changed. The man who'd discovered his wife's affair 3 weeks ago had been broken, betrayed, and lost. The man sitting here now was something different. Harder, maybe, but also clearer about what he wanted and what he was worth. My phone buzzed with one final text from Brenda. "I hope you're happy." I typed back, "I'm getting there." and for the first time in months, I actually meant it.